And we are live. Welcome to the Faith of the Fallen discussion.
Woohoo.
Bethany and I have, well, you messaged me like two quick things, but we haven't really talked about it at all.
No.
So, hello everybody. Howdy. Hello.
Hello.
Hopefully this evening will be a good distraction for everybody.
That we all need.
Exactly. Although we'll get into it obviously, but like given the nature of these books and the nature of people's problems with these books, the nature of Terry Goodkind's writing, like maybe not necessarily today's events, but just like world stuff is relevant and is like a part of how we encounter these books.
True.
Budapest.
Wow. Okay. Hello there.
I mean, exciting. If I was in Budapest, I would not be watching me. So I think there's better things to do in Budapest, but I'm glad that you're here.
Can't miss Faith of the Fallen, Liana. Come on.
I mean, yeah. That thumbnail is pretty unmissable.
Indeed.
Thank you. I don't get to show it off very often because, I try to keep it, not NSFW on the channel, but if you got it, flaunt it.
Every so often,
All right. Do you know what I rated it this time? I know what you rated it. I saw it when I went to go rate it.
I don't, because you had not rated it when I did.
Yeah, I finished it yesterday.
Okay.
Right on time.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought I might be finishing it today, but I managed to finish last night.
Nice.
I gave it a 3.
Okay.
And this was my favorite before.
I think I gave it a 4.
I think, or you said 4.5 in your in the text of it.
I think. Listen, this is.
I'm not attacking. You're like, listen. I can defend this position. Okay, it's fine.
I did not intend that to come across that way. It's been a day.
I know. If I really thought you meant it that way, I wouldn't have said anything.
I did not mean it that way. No, I mean, I think trying to decide how to rate this was tricky because, I really enjoy this book.
I feel like this will be very confusing for you. But, the vibes will be special.
Yeah. I really there are things that I really enjoyed this book because I think in some ways this is has a lot of the things I love about the series and love about Goodkind. But
I saw that in your review. That it was Goodkind at his best.
Yes. Yeah. Certain elements of it.
I pay attention to the things you say.
Okay. You're listening. It's great. But at the same time, from a real world perspective, I deeply disagree with the premise of a lot of what he some of what he's trying to say in this book, and it's so obvious that this book is intended to be very anti-communism, anti-socialist.
Yeah. But I think those are also two things that do get conflated a lot. And this is more specifically anti-communist than it is anti-socialist, which is when you said you deeply disagree with its premise. That is one thing I think we can agree with. Communism doesn't work for some of the very reasons that he states, where he goes with it and the other conclusions that he intends you to draw further than communism is where our opinions would diverge. But at its core, be yes, these are the problems with communism. Yeah. Broad strokes. That's why it doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, I think the problem with this is that this is also
Tell us how you really feel.
I think the problem though is that his premise is also very rah capitalism and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, and I think that yeah, and not acting as if privilege is just an absurd thing, because
I think
extremes.
I think that communism and capitalism, if we view them each in the vacuum of political theory, where it's just in a vacuum, the concept of what these represent and what type of structure they aim to achieve, because neither can be evil, they're just here's how we think we should structure stuff. So if you examine them both that way, they both seem pretty there's good reasons for the systems being designed the way that they are, like in theory. It's when like rubber hits the road and you factor in humanity as the big old variable that affects this, and your system isn't accounting for how humans are going to respond to the system. Both systems fall apart, because like in theory, the way that he envisions the fairy tale of capitalism, it sounds just as good as the fairy tale of communism. Right. And that's the problem. Like, it's a fairy tale, and neither system like actually lives up when you like actually enact it and humans respond to it.
Right. Well, yeah, because the reality is that like I don't know. Anyway, so I think that was what was like tricky for me with this book, is that he's not one for subtlety, it's true. Is that like I really enjoyed the characters and the pacing and like elements of the plot like were fun. Like there was a lot about this that was really fun and enjoyable to read, but I also just like I think some of what he's like presenting as the way things are or should be is like a little absurd and naive. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's again, and because this story shows you like, okay, so we've enacted, he doesn't call it communism, but we've enacted communism. And here we're seeing all the ways that doesn't work. And while it's only people talking about how much better capitalism would be, well, the reverse is true. If you're in a capitalist system, people could say, oh, if only we had communism, and that sounds so much better than what we've got going on right now. It's just that like he doesn't actually have to show it functioning, because it's all talk. It's all about how if only we had the freedom to do XYZ. And you're like, okay, but you actually aren't showing me a functioning system with capitalism. You're just saying
showing us Richard making his own little mini capitalism.
Well, it's not dissimilar from this. I guess people talk about it more when it comes to like legal debates, but this comes up in general. I mean, even interpersonally, in an argument, let's make it not political. Let's say, husband and wife arguing about the like best way to organize their itinerary for the vacation. And the wife's like, here's the plan that I have. And the husband's like, that's a terrible plan. And you're like, do you have a better one? No, I don't. But that's a terrible plan. So like, that's kind of what we have going on here, where it's like, while it's in just like, this is just terrible. And you're like, but what is your solution? Like, how is it going to be better? What is your idea for how to improve it? I got nothing.
Like I would say what I took away from his solution is like, let people run their businesses, let the market self-regulate, and
his solution seems to be
people to be good.
Well, his solution seems to be, I don't like your itinerary, anything but that. So if your system says this is controlled, okay, then my version is we don't control it. Like, I don't actually, like, I haven't proposed to you an actual structured system and actually showed you how that's going to function at every level. I'm just saying what you're doing right now, no, it's bad. And we should do whatever the opposite of that is. It's like not actually being like, here's an alternate itinerary. No, it's just not that.
Well, it's more the like, why don't we just like go and see where it takes us kind of thing, which it like there is a theory of that, of like market self-regulation in capitalism that doesn't actually work in practice. But his name is Richard. Yes.
Book 6 is when we really realize his name is Richard and it's staying Richard. So I think before, when I've talked about these books, and how I never noticed, and I mean, I think nowadays, even if no one had told me, I would notice it. I just wasn't that aware of stuff and wasn't looking for it. But at the same time, again, like a lot of fantasy has, a chosen one, I said before, is rugged individualism at its most magical. Because a chosen one saying, only I can do it, and I alone have the power, like, yes, you alone, you have a magic sword, you are prophesied and ordained to be the chosen one to bring balance to the force, etc. Yes, but like in reality, like if you're telling me that everyone is a chosen one in their own life, like that's not actually how that works. Because do you see how your character is the chosen one because of magic? That's not a thing we have. So like I never noticed that stuff in these books because I'm like, well, yeah, Richard is they keep saying, Richard, you're a rare person. And I'm like, your system can't be based. Like, if you're proposing to me the capitalism, which is, let's be real, that's what he's proposing, or at least more free market. Maybe not necessarily capitalism, but
a free market, yeah.
And you're showing me that the only person who succeeds at this is the rare person, which you have called him a rare person, and it takes him to do it. That means the system's not good.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just sort of like, I don't know. Also, okay, I was like, thought it was kind of ridiculous and hilarious, the ending of the book, and how like this piece of art has opened the eyes of all the people.
I didn't think of this until literally like 5 minutes before we went live.
Mhm.
How much the like imagery, particularly on the cover, but it's in the story as well. That's why it's on the cover of these huge statues. How much that looks like Atlas Shrugged.
Oh, which is probably intentional, I guess. I've never read Atlas Shrugged, so like I
You've seen
don't.
the cover of Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah.
With Atlas looking all Atlasy.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. It's I just thought it was kind of funny because I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, like people see the statue you carved and are like, the nobility. This is what the world is supposed to be like." I'm like, "Okay, sure."
Which, like, I was able to buy it again specifically for this book because we've established that he carves with the gift, and that even little things that he carves are like mind-bogglingly, life-alteringly religious experiences just to have a knickknack. So that if
Yeah.
he takes that skill
So
and
from with because of magic,
yes,
it works, right?
yeah. So if you're telling me just carving a statue and this was, like a low magic, almost non-magic fantasy, I'd be like, BS. But you've already told me time and again how him like whittling a little figure is everyone's like, oh my god, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. So.
Oh man, yeah. So I don't know. It was one of these things where I was like,
The
oh,
Atlas Shrugged is
yeah.
strong in this one.
So it was, it was one of those things where I was like, oh my gosh, this is like kind of ridiculous, but at the same time, I am like loving Kaylin being badass Kaylin. I'm loving, Richard just being his like happy self, like, let's make the best of a bad situation and make everybody around him better. Like I just in like that I really enjoy.
You read this book as
So
trying for the same thing as Atlas Shrugged, but so much better. I mean, it helps that it's magic.
magic
A lot
helps.
of this is like, well, magic. And then we have another example of extremely clever naming, where we call the pickled fat lardo. Such a clever name for
So
that
clever.
food.
Yes. Mhm.
And then there was a paragraph like towards the very, very, very end of the book when Kaylin is expressing enthusiasm over it, and they say lardo instead of another word like it or that or some. They say lardo, 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 lardo like 10 times, and I'm like, please stop.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
Possibly.
maybe, yeah.
Yes. The lardo also was the thing that I was saying last time that I was like, that's what I remember of Faith of the Fallen. Is them living together and him eating lardo
Lardo.
and carving statues. That was pretty much what I remembered of the book.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
We weren't trying to convince you.
it's yeah, I don't know, but it like at the same time, this is fun. Like it's among the better books in the series.
I think
Like
what I'm learning is my favorite is Stone of Tears. Also, I hope
I
you
mean,
can hear
Stone of
that.
Tears is really good. Um, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know if we want to talk about like linearly the plot because we just kind of dove in at random.
We did. Yeah.
But I also have a lot of thoughts about why this was my favorite before and why it isn't anymore.
Okay. Tell me.
I was like, do we want to do that or like do it? Because I was like, if we want to, we'll get there if we just go linearly. But I don't know if there's like,
I don't know. I mean,
I did. Okay, we're doing spoilers, right? Or
Yeah.
we're waiting to do spoilers. Okay, everyone,
been
if you didn't know, we're doing
We've
spoilers
been
as
doing
of now.
spoilers. The whole
I
thing
mean,
has
we just
been
kind of said that he's talking about building
I mean,
statues, so we didn't really say anything.
yeah,
But
I
I
guess so.
did forget, and I forgot so hard that I'm like, is this even real? Because like, I don't remember this happening at all. That Warren dies.
Yes.
I was like, is he back again in another book? Because like, he also dies off screen. So I was like, is he dead? 'Cause I don't
Or
remember
is
him
he just
dying.
pretending to die for prophecy reasons? I was wondering that too.
Well, just because like Kaylin leaves him and is like he's dying, and then they
Yeah.
never have a funeral for him, and you never
Well,
see the body.
and you know those people are like low key, like low key. They fake deaths before.
Yes. And like
Hmm.
also, I just was like Zed not being able to heal him. I was like, I'm sorry, why is this the limit? We've seen you heal.
People are saying he actually did die.
I'm okay. I mean, I wasn't saying that I was for sure he didn't,
Yeah.
but I was like, I don't remember. And maybe that's why I don't remember it happening, is because I probably, when I first read Faith of the Fallen, thought exactly this, that it was like, is he dead? And so that in my
Right.
brain, I was just like, well, pending. I haven't written him off yet. And
Which
so
is like kind of messed up. They get married and then he dies almost immediately. Like
except that as soon as they get married and it's so perfect and they have their perfect night, he's like, he's gonna kill one of them. He's
so
gonna
messed
do
up.
it.
Like, come on, just let them be happy. Oh my god.
No one but Kaylin and Richard can be together.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nikki is fun. I really like
I don't
Nikki
know
as
if
an
fun
antagonist.
is the word we want to use for her from the majority of Faith of the Fallen.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think she's kind of a fun antagonist.
But she herself is like anti-fun.
Yeah. Yeah. But I like her. I think she's just interesting. She's kind of like, she's like so nihilistic. She's like, yeah, sure, torture me. I don't care. You're gonna kill me? Good, kill me. It's like Glocta.
I guess.
A little bit.
Except like she's not Glockta would be so mad at her if he found out she was being like this. He'd be like, you are in a fully functioning body in zero pain.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Tradesies, you can have mine.
Yeah. Well, and also she's been brainwashed by like cultish ideas. So there's that too. But yeah. I think she's an interesting character.
Yeah, she is.
Maya.
Yeah, I like it. So I mean, this is why actually I think this book really, really like I read it at the right time for me when I first read it, because I was very much in a, not to the degree that she is, of course. Maybe I shouldn't say of course, but not to the degree that she is, but in the mindset of like your own life is worthless and living it for yourself is, there is no point to that. And if there is any meaning to be had in life, it's living it for something or someone. And if you don't have a calling or a cause or something to do with your life to make it meaningful, simply living is not meaning unto itself, is like where I was. And so reading Faith of the Fallen and how strongly the book is like, no, live your life for yourself, it's yours to live, was the exact thing that I needed to hear.
I can see that.
And reading it now that I'm not in that headspace anymore, I'm like, okay, but capitalism has its problems.
Fair. There's
a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a communism cult. It's like if communism was a cult.
Well, no, because it's not just communism. It's also like heavily leaning into that sort of like very old school Christianity of like, you know, all the paintings of like the sinful man and how you're worthless and it's only God's grace that can save you.
It's like the bad side of it of like the
you must buy indulgences to save your unworthy soul.
Right. Yeah. That is true. That's true.
So he's like, it's taking communism and the absolute worst and most oppressive forms of like Catholicism and Christianity. And then what if, because it's kind of weird that it is that way, because communism was pretty anti-religious. So like the religion was communism.
It's true.
So it's kind of strange to see this blending of the two.
True.
It was like two of the most oppressive things. Like, what if they had a baby?
What if they had a baby, a cult baby?
Yeah.
in a magical
Because
world.
like being under oppressive religion is awful. Being under the oppressive yoke of communism is awful. What if we had both? Perfect. Bring in the chosen one to save us all.
Yes. Oh man.
Thank you. Yeah, her mama was really into it. Which I feel like I don't actually want, that book. I don't want to know, but it did make me wonder, like, what made her mother that way, and what made the father marry her in the first place.
Yeah.
Because, like, that, much like, you can say, oh, well, Nikki's that way because she was made to be that way. Well, the people that made her be that way were made to be that way. Like, you can keep going. Who's ultimately to blame?
Right. I mean, it's possible she sort of like got more into it as she got older or something, I guess, like her mom, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
But her mom radicalized, I think. And then, yeah.
And her mom's, and then was it Father Nerev? Is that?
I don't remember.
Well, the head of the church of the
guy.
New Order,
Yes.
or whatever. He kind of reminded me a teensy tiny bit, and the dynamic between them of what's his name, Constantine in the Winter Night trilogy.
Yeah, I can see that. I love how Maya is now interested in reading this book.
I mean, we should tell Maya about Temple of the Winds. Then she'll be really interested.
Listen, you know what I did appreciate with Faith of the Fallen? They do so much like recapping. I feel like you could read this almost as a standalone.
He does that in all the books, and I've seen so many people who read them back to back get really angry about that. And I'm like, okay, but if you're reading them as they come out, and there's a lot of series I wish did that, because I don't want to have to reread all the books every single time, unless it's First Law, in which case I will happily do that. I don't want to have to reread all the books every time a new one comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's useful, and it gives you kind of like basic information to understand the world you're getting into, so you could just read it.
And yeah, it was sad to read about Nikki's father.
Yeah.
The way he was beaten down.
Yeah, it was sad. I think what I enjoyed is it was like Richard and Kaylin being their most Richard and Kaylin selves. You know what I mean?
Although I have to say, I'm getting a little tired of the fact that if Kaylin is not with Richard, like if they're not on the same quest, the only thing he can think to do with her is to be like, lead an army, do some war. That's all that she does when she's not with Richard. Like, can she have a not war quest?
She's a very good strategist, you know?
I know, but it's just like, okay, we've seen Richard with a sister while Kaylin's at war before. I think it's called Stone of Tears.
If it ain't broke.
I would just like to see Kaylin do something different.
Yeah. That's fair. But yeah, I would say so far, I think Stone of Tears is also still my favorite, but this is like among the better ones. Like I enjoyed it, as absurd as some of it is.
As all of it is.
As all of it is. It was one that I had fun reading.
Yeah, I mean, it's, if we're going with the skipping theory, like every other book is like an engaging read. So it was definitely a much more engaging read than Soul of the Fire or Blood of the Fold.
Yeah, I did not like the last one.
I'm telling you though, the books are always better when Kaylin and Richard are apart.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the problem is like I don't know that he knows how to let Kaylin be her like badass self when Richard is with her.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
I mean, for the books that they're apart, they'll come together for some badassery. Because, like, she badassly nearly killed him. But, like, she comes in guns blazing. And in Stone of Tears, she was kind of badass at the end of Stone of Tears. So, where they were together.
Yeah. Priscilla, I agree. Soul of the Fire was the worst. It's my least favorite so far.
It's just the most forgettable.
I mean, I actively disliked it, but
I was like, why does this exist? Couldn't we have had like a couple chapters in a different book to be like, so the chimes are a thing, just so we know they're a thing? Did we need this? But yeah, like it's that book that primes Richard to be like, I've lost faith in humanity, and for Kaylin to be super beat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
I also I didn't remember, and I was like, I mean, I did remember that Nikki takes him, and that it's like, you know, it's forced for some reason, but I couldn't remember why. Like originally, she was like, I need to do this, and I couldn't remember how she got him to agree to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, aha, yes, this is coming back to me now.
Everyone seems to hate Naked Empire, so that's
Well,
fun.
Naked Empire is the one where I stopped. I've never read past Naked Empire. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have not. I have read this one before. Like this
I
is
think you've read I don't know if you've read Naked Empire, but you've read Pillars of Creation.
I think so. I
Which is
may have read
next.
Naked Empire. I just like don't remember.
So
I don't
Naked
remember.
Empire is the one where he stops being a vegetarian.
Right.
And I was like,
Well, he's not really a vegetarian in this book either. Like
well, in this
because
one
he's
they
not
explains
fighting.
that like because he's not killing.
Right.
And but in Naked Empire it's like, oh no, there's just like at no point do you need to be a vegetarian anymore.
Yeah.
Whether you're killing or not. I was like, cool. Love the consistency.
Wow, Maya added the first book to her TBR. Okay. This should be
Have
interesting.
fun. Listen, it doesn't mean what you think it means. I'm guessing that I like Chainfire better. I just never got to it because Naked Empire wore me out. I was like, I'll read on someday, and then I didn't.
And now is someday.
She's the only one to figure it out on her own about Richard's bond, and it's hard to be controlled by Jane. And it is also interesting how that's a thing that I like about the magic systems in these books, where they're all subjective, where like this magic of the sword isn't that it knows right from wrong, it's that it works based on what the wielder believes is right and wrong.
Right.
And the way that the bond to Richard, there's no like objective definition for what being loyal to him means, but if you feel that you are loyal to him, whatever that means for you, then it works. And so
Right, which is interesting.
that happened earlier when the sisters were like, we'll swear an oath to you, and we're gonna peace out, and that's how we're serving you, by not being around, so it should work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, but I unlike with Soul of the Fire, I do like who we're spending time with in Pillars of Creation, and I think I don't think you remember it, and you know other people may not as well, but what I remember from a new magic concept that is explained and explored, I liked that because it's another thing where I was like, oh, I like that. That's kind of an interesting idea.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't remember liking it. The next one after this is Pillars of Creation.
Pillars of Creation. Yeah, so that'll be for.
I'm just excited to get to Chainfire because much like Bethany on the first Law read along, is like I'm excited to get to new material because I've read everything, even though you know some of it, in particular like Blood of the Fold and Soul of the Fire, where I'm like I may as well not have read it because I don't remember anything about it. But I have technically read all these books before, and I'm excited to read Chainfire. And
I know I at least started Naked Empire. I just have no memory of like what happened in these books, but I did years ago read them. But I definitely didn't go beyond.
I mean, Faith of the Fallen was such a like high for me that after that, when I read Pillars of Creation, I was like, okay, that's fine, okay. But maybe Naked Empire, that'll end up no, swing and a miss. I was like, we're never gonna achieve the Faith of the Fallen high, are we?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Like when this is all over, we'll have to like rank the books.
Stone of Tears is currently top.
Yeah, same.
I thought maybe Faith of the Fallen, if it still was my favorite, but it is not. So, but I do feel like I was kind, I was worried, and but I also wasn't unprepared for the idea that I wouldn't love as much the second time. That's why I was worried, because I was like, I suspect that I probably will feel differently. But I think it was interesting to like see what it was about it that hit like at the exact right time for me when I did read it. And I wouldn't alter that for the world. That was there's always people are saying there's the right book for the right reader at the right time.
Yep. 100%. Sometimes it's like what you need to hear. And that's the thing about it, is that like on a societal level, I think what this book is saying doesn't work, but on an individual level, like there is something to be said for like finding meaning in your life where you are and making the best of the life you have. And like, like I think that like on an individual level, that's great. Like what it's saying about society is in general, no.
Well, and that's kind of the thing too about like communism and capitalism, not that they actually exist on any like spectrum the way that like acidity and what's the opposite of it?
Base. It's acids and bases.
I know, but it's alkaline.
Alkaline. That's the word.
So like those are actually like opposites. So capitalism and communism are arguably opposites, but they're not like, you can't say it's so like concretely that they are like that is the opposite to it. But in a lot of respects it is. And I feel like they're both extremes. And that's a lot of things about capitalism are better than communism. But a lot of things, when you have a purely extreme capitalist system, a lot of things about communism are better than that. So it's when you go to these like huge polarized extremes that you end up with something not so great.
Yeah.
And but so it's for him using these books to, again, that's why I said it was sort of like a saying in the argument, I don't have a replacement, I'm just saying your system is bad, because he doesn't then go on to show you, okay, so we install the system that I say is better across the board, see how much better it works. He never does that, as far as I've read up to Naked Empire. And I don't think he's going to have like Richard be like president of a capitalist his nation, Dahara. I was like, Rawl is the family name. Dahara. And that's the thing, like you never have to like test the metal of your own suggestion if you're just going to keep showing us a worst case scenario of the one that you hate. If you keep showing me the worst case scenario of the one that you hate, I mean, yes, I agree. What you're showing me is awful. I'm not saying that's a good system. No one is saying that's a good system. What you've written is a terrible system. But you've also written a straw man. And if you're never actually going to show us how yours would work, or never actually show us like how, because like communism had its evils, there's a reason we're against it, but it wasn't exactly the way that you're depicting it either.
No. Well, and I just think it's funny that like
I know. He just does. But that reminded me of like I don't know if you've ever watched Bill Burr, the comedian. That's my brother's and my favorite comedian. But he was just talking about like getting older and weirder, and how like that like weirdness gets like downloaded onto your kids, and they just start talking about it to other people, and about like his kid. I think at that point he didn't have kids yet, and I think he was talking about why he's scared of having kids, because they're gonna say everything that he says, and he's like, your kid's just gonna be at school like, my daddy keeps cash in the walls because he doesn't trust banks. And I was like, that's Richard right now.
Yep. Oh man.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting thought experiment at the very least.
Would.
To a fanfic that villainizes capitalism instead. But it would be I don't know, more intellectually honest, I suppose. It would be interesting if he then did have a book that showed the equal and opposite horror show that is extreme in the other direction, and having like, because a lot of the time these books do that, where they show you like two opposing ideas and show you how neither is perfect, and show you how the people who hold fiercely to either ideal are wrong. Like the books do that a lot.
Right.
But when it comes to capitalism, no, that's perfect.
Well, and I think one of the things that you see in this book too is that like beyond just the effect of the ideas, it's still not equally lived out. Like there's still so much corruption in the system with officials, and with like who is forced to give up more than others and stuff,
But Maya, we should not hide money in the walls because money is a myth. We should hide gold in the walls. Yeah, gases. I mean, I got a Prius at the end of last year. Could not have had better timing for getting a Prius.
Yeah. Can gold pay my bill?
I mean, I think in the Mad Max world we're heading towards maybe start storing, actual supplies.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, this is what made Faith of the Fallen like the 11 out of 10 that it was for me when I first read it.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, yeah, I mean, within reason.
Oh my gosh. Well, I also think it's like a matter of age. I mean, like, I don't know, like the world seems like it has more possibilities when you're younger. Is that terrible? That's kind of terrible.
I mean, the world does have more possibilities for you when you are younger.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's like the speech that Richard gives to that kid that is in his building, where he's like, "You have one life, and it's yours to make make of it what you will, and you're choosing to do nothing with it." And
Yep.
which is like that as the basis on which to build your political system is not, that's not, you can't function that way. But as like a dad to a son, hey, you gotta make the best of it. Like relying on people pulling themselves up by their bootstraps to have like widespread flourishing of your society, no. But on an individual basis, your actual advice to an individual saying make the most of it, whatever that means in whatever system we're in, absolutely.
Right.
Which is why these books, because they're fantasy, because he's actually a chosen one with magic, and because it's only ever on the individual level. I personally saw an opportunity and was able to make money, and it's wrong that I was prevented from doing that. I mean, sure. And that's where, like, yes, in that sense, capitalism, yeah, like, if you want to be rewarded, you want to be paid for the work that you do. And if you do more work than someone else, then you should be remunerated, commensurately. Right. And then if you're getting paid the same as someone else because of it has to be equal, even though you did not do equal amounts of work, no one is going to be happy in a system like that. Like, you don't have to be
right. But like what he never addresses is sort of the pitfalls of like, okay, sure, but if you aren't a, white able-bodied dude like Richard,
yeah, and I mean, because he makes everything, he turns up everything to 11, right? And the idea that those who have more and are able could give some portion of what they make into the collective fund to be used for people who are less able. But he takes it to the point where they've taken literally all of your wages, and no one is advocating for that. I mean, under communism, maybe. But like, if he's using it as like a C nowadays, anything that's like veering towards socialism is evil because they're taking away your earned money. And you're like, okay, but like you're paying for the ultimate
that
good.
Extreme one way or another, right? Well, and I think the other piece,
but he makes it extreme because he's like, if I have to give any of what I do, then I'm a slave to those who are in need. You're like, oh Jesus, okay, you're not a okay. Maybe in this system, because you've written it in a way where like literally this system would have fallen apart on day one. No one would have actually
nobody would have
in this system.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Nikki employing a man even though he has no skill. Yeah.
I don't know where you're looking.
Priscilla. Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing too, is that it does, yeah, you're right. Like, but it doesn't get addressed of like, yeah, okay, sure, business owners shouldn't have to employ somebody who doesn't do their job necessarily. However, like, then what do you do for people who aren't just lazy, which is what this may.
Well, also, it doesn't just insinuate. It basically says that if you'd give handouts, I mean, it's the same thing that we hear nowadays about how like welfare queens living on handouts. That like if you give somebody a helping hand, they'll rely on it, and they'll never try to work for themselves. And you're just like, which is why like it's not, neither system is perfect, because like they're not, if people who say that, they're not wholly wrong. Every system like that is ripe for abuse by certain individuals, like
But it's
people
rare.
who, yeah, but so I'm saying, so like in a system like that, yes, there will be abuse. Like you're not wrong
Right.
that never happens. Like sure, certainly it does happen.
Yeah,
And it's certainly any system where someone is trying to be helped, people are going to game the system. People are anything. Like in your capitalist system, in their communist system, people will game the system, whatever that system is. I mean, when we look at people pretending to have PTSD so that they can get benefits from the army, does that mean we should not take care of people who genuinely have PTSD? No. But will people fake it to try to get a benefit? Yes, they will. So like, you know, like if you're saying that's your concern, that's not a reason to get, you know, to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right, exactly. Well, and I think there's also no sort of recognition of the reality of that there are structural things that prevent some people from being able to just do what Richard does, because we're not like, he hasn't created a world in which there are things like racism, you know? So I just have a lot of questions. I'm like, okay, like this is naive, you know?
Well, again, it's the same like just I mean that we see all the time, that like everyone has an equal chance to succeed, and you're like, that simply isn't true. Like
Not
if you were able to achieve a situation where everyone did start at the starting line with an equal opportunity, well then yeah, if we're looking at your system again in a vacuum in terms of like how this is meant to function, like
right,
sure, that sounds great. In a perfect world, that sounds great and should function just fine. The
right.
thing is, we are not in a perfect world, and your system does not account for that.
Yes. Yep, exactly. Which is why he should just admit that he was writing fantasy and not political
But
philosophy.
it is confusing to well, I don't know if confusing is the right word, but like it's in conflict with itself because of how often Richard has done things selflessly and done things for the
Right.
greater good and done and encouraged everyone to do things for the greater good, which is like a lot of the kind of like message of the books. But then when it comes to, and I appreciate again, like for political talking points of our modern day, when people are like, you shouldn't be taxed, it should be charitable, people should just give. And like maybe that's his argument, but there are definitely times I mean, okay, so he's anti the forcing of this communist system, which again, the way you've written this communist system, which would have fallen apart on day one because they would have revolted. But okay, fine, this is the system, and no one is going to disagree. That's awful. No one is going to say that system sounded fantastic. Like, no, obviously, you've made sure to make it the worst possible thing. But you've also written a character that forced every nation to come under its yoke, like a Caesar, Napoleon, Stalin figure in Richard, and asked us to root for that. And I don't think Richard himself would be too keen on that state of affairs. It just so happens that we have a benevolent dictator, which, like, yeah, benevolent dictatorship is in some ways the most ideal situation to get things done and to have a flourishing population. But a benevolent dictator is not something you can guarantee long term.
No.
And so it's not a system that is functional. It is a situation that is ideal, but it is not a system that can be existing in perpetuity. So like Richard is a benevolent dictator. So like yay for the people while he's alive. Like that's not a system either. So,
Except that right now, for this book, he's like opting out of his dictatorship because he's pissed that
because they don't deserve him.
They don't deserve him because
he's a big old
voted
brat.
him down.
He's such a brat in this book.
They have to prove themselves.
They don't appreciate me, so I'm not doing nothing. And like at the same time, I'm making fun of it because he is a bit that way. But like I do not disagree entirely. And this is the thing that people said a lot about, you know, our the last 4 years. That like if there is good that came from this, it is like a heightened awareness and like civic minded like citizens who are aware of what's happening, who are paying attention to what's happening, and an educated electorate. And in that sense, I mean, like he's not wrong that like people who have not lost something or have not truly reached a point where they are feeling the hurt of something, people are pretty apathetic and people won't really do anything. So he's not wrong. Like when he's saying your revolution will fall apart because none of you are willing to kill, none of you are willing to die, none of you are willing to go past the point of no return. You're like, oh, well, let's ask nicely. It's not going to work. And you're like, yeah, you're not wrong. Like when we've seen, like, you know, the Stalin regime, like that didn't fall because they asked nicely.
Right.
So like he's not wrong in saying that his own army or his own people won't actually fight for something if they're not conceiving of the fact that they are going to lose it.
Yeah.
So like in that sense, yes, but at the same time, is the solution to be like, fine, you all die then that'll show you. Like, I don't know that that's a good system either.
No.
Yes, the nuance of reality is ignored by Atlas Shrugged.
But at least this one is more fun to read. Okay.
And also it's like a third of the length.
Yeah.
Atlas Shrugged is it's not short. Rise up and live as long as it's under Taharn rule. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. No nuance is ignored because it's just easier to argue. Yeah.
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 Pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have a purely fantasy world building storytelling pet peeve. It's just not like from a political perspective as a citizen of the world. No, like just like your fantasy book. He's generally decent with like battle strategies and war tactics and things like that. It's not like the best thing, and it's not, a lot of it is also kind of vague on details. It does fall apart under close scrutiny because armies, the way that he writes them, function the way societies do, where it's like, you know, these big sweeping plans that just work and they don't account for the like minutia, but like they're generally like pretty sound ideas. So, you know, pretty sound strategy, broad strokes. But he's written himself into a little bit of a, maybe not a corner, but it's a problem that he has made Jagang and that army so OP that I do not believe that they would not overrun the Midlands army, the Daharan army, instantly.
Oh,
and the way they make it sound like, oh, like they are too many for us to defeat, so we're going to keep defeating chunks of them, but they still have more to throw at us. So we won this one battle, but they have more to throw at us. I frankly do not understand why they didn't just keep running you over until you are all dead. Like there is no, especially when they made it clear that Jagang does not care about people dying. So it can't be that, oh, we didn't want to waste the men. He does not care. So he would just simply send his horde, like the army of the dead in Return of the King, to just like across you until you are dead. I don't care what magic glass you have. I don't care what little tricks you have up your sleeve. It does not matter. You've told me that the sheer numbers that he has cannot be beaten. So why is it still a question? Why are you still fighting? So that there's a plot that can happen? That's why.
Yeah. I mean,
and like if he had made Jagang's forces even just twice as big as Midland's forces, I'd be like, that's a big hill to climb.
Right.
That's a big hurdle. But
it's like dramatically,
it's like in infinite numbers. And you're just like, I don't understand why there's anyone left standing. There's no reason for it.
No. Yeah.
You know, he doesn't need to be a good strategist because he has the numbers. You don't have to have any strategy whatsoever.
I mean, maybe the argument is just that he enjoys the battling back and forth. Because he is kind of sadistic, so maybe that's why.
Nah.
I don't know.
I just don't know how there's still a war.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, as OP as Richard is, Jagang's army is the most OP thing in the whole series.
Yep.
And them just being in the mountain paradise.
having a holiday, winter holiday.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Where we get the seeds planted for the pull yourself up by your bootstraps plotline we're about to see, where we had to force Kaylin to heal herself and to not just give in to being coddled, because if we keep coddling her, she will never pull herself up by her bootstraps. And like that's the thing, like you're not wrong when it comes to like, you know, what's the physical therapy and like recovering, like, you're not wrong. Like, people do, they'll say, oh, it hurts, and you're like, yes, but you have to start to use it because that's the only way you'll heal.
Yeah.
So yes, that's true. But again, to apply that across an entire society and say that that's how everything works, that's how some things work. That's how sometimes that is true.
Right. Yeah. I mean, physical therapy is like that, but...
Which is funny because what's the wizard's sixth rule? It's like, reason is truth, and that, like, feelings don't come into it. It was the original facts don't care about your feelings. Oh boy.
Oh man. Yep.
I don't know which part was passionate because I feel like I've been at 11 for this
I
whole
think
time.
this was about the world building army thing.
Oh. I'm glad that that came my passion for this subject came across.
Yes.
Yeah. Which again, on the individual level, yes, they're pushing her but being supportive, and that's all well and good. But a lot of people don't have support systems like that. And that's the whole problem.
Right.
Not everybody has. In fact, no one in this world has a relationship like Richard and Kaylin. If they come close, they die.
Right.
So.
Which is sad.
This is why I wanted Dreffin to live and to be around and to be gay. And him, I like Warren and Verna very much, but also Dreffin and Warren, if Dreffin was not the piece of shit that he was. It's like having a Richard Warren fanfic, but not, because Dreffin isn't Richard, and they can just also be happening.
There you go.
We really do need to rewrite this.
Yes. Speaking of which, I did kind of hate the whole thing of, like, Nikki finally deciding, yeah, he does, finally deciding she wants Richard to sleep with her, and he refuses, so she's like, oh, well, let me go just take some random dude into my bed and let him, like, violently have sex with me. I was like, that is...
I'm unsurprised. This is a good kind of book.
Right. Well, and then because of the maternity spell...
I just can't believe that, I mean, of course we had that scene, but where Kaylin thinks that it's actually Richard, and it has to be Kara to be like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Gotta have Kara around to sit straight. She's there.
Whereas I was like, clearly this was not Richard, because no.
Not just that, but, like, you literally have no idea what's going on. So, like, who's to say that, like, we know what happened, like what you just described, but who's to say someone didn't just assault Nikki? Like, how do you know? You don't know anything.
Yeah, that's, yes, accurate.
Don't get your hopes up. He's the person I'm talking about does not end up being gay or good, and I want
there
both.
are a couple of women who are.
Yeah.
And they're happy for a little while until
they're not.
Them dies.
Because of course.
Because nobody can be happy. If a couple is happy, one of them will die.
And this also happens in that scene. So we get a twofer.
Yeah.
But when you say push the idea of the maternity spell further, what more could he have done?
It wasn't. No, I agree with that. It wasn't really explored very much.
They do mention that, like, Nikki feels some, like, echo of Kaylin's love for Richard, and that Kaylin feels some of, like, Nikki's sadness and emptiness. Like, but it did, okay, the nitpicky part of me, I was like, so, like, if there's a breeze, do they feel that on their skin? If they are, like, kind of tired and didn't get a lot of sleep, do you also feel
That's what I was wondering.
deprived?
I'm like, if somebody was fighting in a battle and their muscles are sore, like...
But then also, I'd be like, so is it whichever is worse overrides whichever is good? Like, if I had a great night of sleep, but you didn't, does my healthy perkiness override your sleeplessness and you can go off of, like, my well-restedness? Or is it like, when you get a sale and you get, like, buy one, get one free, but whichever one was the cheaper one is the free one? Right. Is that how this works?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, is Kaylin starving? Is that what's happening?
Right. No, I mean, that's yeah, like,
I think he just, like,
or is
didn't wanna
she only
bother.
surviving because Kaylin is, ingesting nutrients and Nikki is somehow getting some of those? I don't know.
Because like Richard was concerned that if Nikki got sick or died, then that would affect Kaylin.
Right.
But I mean, becoming emaciated is also going to
Yeah.
presumably affect Kaylin.
Yep.
Kaylin has been fun, but like last time she did this in Stone of Tears, she wasn't eating anything either and nearly got poisoned. So the girl apparently does not. I mean, this is one of those series where the heroes can just go like Energizer bunnies on
Yeah,
no food and no sleep, and you're
and
just
they're
like,
fine.
BS. Like Richard being able to like do everything he does and all of that like physical labor on cabbage soup, I'm sorry, you'd be dead. Absolutely not. And then she's like, oh, like, it's like it's made him really lean but still muscular. I'm like, no, you would begin to lose muscle or just like fall over and die. Like you couldn't do it.
Or like the bug-infested millet.
Yum.
Mm,
That Nikki isn't eating so that Richard will have some.
it's great. Yeah. Priscilla, you're not wrong. Zed knows what's up.
That's the thing that I know is never bad. Zed is always the highlight.
Zed is great.
Always love Zed.
Yeah, same.
And he's also like, he's so warm, like he's that presence that like, yes, he's the Gandalf that like knows magic and can do magic and like is like a walking exposition device. Like he just,
Yes.
that's great to have around. But he's also just like such a caring, warm person that like, when Kaylin's upset or missing Richard, like a hug from Zed and being like, I miss him too. Like you really feel the like, I feel hugged by Zed when I like read that. He's like that's the granddad you definitely want to have, not just because he's magical.
Yeah.
He talks to chickens naked. Who doesn't want that?
Yep. Yep.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Nikki got to live.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think, again, this is where, like, because he's pretty black and white about this capitalism thing. And you're like, okay, apparently that's the hill you're dying on. Because when it comes to, like, the Sisters of the Dark, he's very happy to redeem them and very happy to show how they're led down that path of darkness. And we have, this is basically Nikki's redemption arc, this whole book.
Yeah.
And we have, and that other sister that she immediately died, the one that went after Nikki and just returned to the light, she dies. But like we had that too, where like we see how they become Sisters of the Dark, and not all of them are pure evil. And like the Mord Sith and the entire nation of Dahara is like all, a huge redemption arc. So
yeah.
And I mean, just I like that of the like thuggish punk boys, right, that Richard encounters. He gives those little pep talk and teaches them how to be useful and pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Which like is not dissimilar from like after school programs to teach you a valuable skill, like
it's
which are funded by the government and your taxes. But anyway, I like that because I was like, okay, it's not like every punk kid is going to like suddenly be like, oh, thanks, mister, now I feel useful. So I do like that the one that Nikki ends up, having it off with, that not everyone is sold on this, that Richard isn't able, even though he's a rare person and everybody just falls into his spell, not everybody though, that like it worked on the people that already had it in them to like, they just needed to be shown the way, as opposed to other people who are like, I'm very happy to be evil.
Right.
And your little speech about helping myself. Ha, no way.
You're ruining this whole system that's how it's supposed to work, and you're ruining my friends. Yeah.
Dear one and bags. Who needs to curse when you can just say bags?
The toasted toes truth.
It hasn't used toasted toes truth in a minute.
In a minute, yeah.
But yeah. Good old Zed.
I love him. Well, yeah, I feel like after this conversation, I feel like this is like a 4-star for me. I think I just right after reading it, I was like, this was so fun though. But I did 4.5.
Who I miss?
Like,
You know who I miss? Nathan.
Nathan, yes, we haven't really seen Nathan.
He's just like a boogeyman hovering in the fringes where they're like, we're still looking for Nathan. He could be up to anything.
good.
And I do like, again, how I just said the redemption arcs of Sisters of the Dark, but also redemption arcs for Sisters of the Light, who are the evil ones in Stone of Tears. And the fact that, like, we're still to this, like, it's been 4 books since then, and we're still, like, deconstructing, is what they did right or wrong? And the answer is neither. Like, was their heart in the right place? Some of them. I would say Anne's heart is in the right place. And did she go about it in ways that are less than ideal? Yeah. Was she also the product of a belief system that made her think this was the right way to go about things? Also, yes. And the way that it's still saying, you know, like their little debate about prophecy and about, like, did you make this come about because you wanted to make sure this prophecy would come about, and without your meddling, it wouldn't have come true?
Right.
It's your fault that this happened. And then other, you know, they're like, well, or it would have come about a different way, and we just made it come about the way, the best case way.
Right.
And you're like, you can't go back and do it over, so you can never know which it is.
Like,
so I like those little, like, debates that it has internally, because it's not like this is the absolute truth of how this is. They're like, we don't know. Like, there's an argument to be made for either. And I like that for the most part, these books do that when it comes with questions like this. It's like there is an argument to be made, and different characters will represent the different sides of it, and they'll kind of debate it. And it's kind of like, well, we don't actually have an answer. But when it comes to communism versus capitalism, there is an answer, and a statue confirming it, and a mass revolution. Like there is no debate. You're like, okay,
yep,
cool.
Yeah, no question there. But yeah, no, the prophecy.
Is that unpopular? I like Anne.
I like Anne too.
She's not like my favorite, but the loss of Warren for us.
And Verna, it's so sad.
At the same time, Kaylin burning the Journey book, I was like, it's not necessary. Are we burning books now? Is that what we're doing?
I mean, it's really like a journal.
But I mean, it's a really useful magical thing. You're like, if I was Kaylin, I'd be like, I'm confiscating this. I'm keeping this. You can't be trusted with this. I'm gonna take this over.
Yeah, that's fair. She was making a point.
A bit extreme. She's always getting mad at Richard for being like acting out violently and being like, it's my way or the highway. Yeah. Kaylin's been hanging out with him too much.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I think that's true. Like, they're so certain that everything they do is right. And, it's like part of what Richard and now Kaylin are doing is poking holes in their certainty and their assumptions about how the world works and like what their role in it should be.
And I do like that we got to see it from Nikki's perspective, coming to the Palace of the Prophets as a kid, and how it just furthered the indoctrination that she already received as a kid.
Yeah.
And how to this day, the sister that does go after her, and it's like turned back to the light. She's not a sister of the dark anymore. And how being a sister of the light isn't necessarily that much better, because when she's like, oh, I remember Nikki as a girl, like, I probably should have made her even more penitent. That's where I messed up. And you're like, no, that's not the lesson here. But the fact that they still think that, and Anne is like, yeah, good point. And you're like, nope. It's the opposite of what Nikki needed. And so, like, and that's why Nikki is so struck by Richard, because it's like the first time she's seen a different answer to this that isn't, I mean, it's not unreasonable to think if she's been fed first that she's awful and horrible and irredeemable just by default, and then the only other path is the keeper, and you're like, well, I'm already consigned to the keeper because I can never be good enough. You're like, yeah, it's not surprising you'd be pushed to that side of things. And those are the only 2 options you've been presented, to be like purest of pure, or you're a sister of the dark. And those are the only 2 options. You're like, okay. So Richard comes in and is like, neither. And you're like, tell me more. I will kidnap you so you can tell me more.
Oh, man. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, yeah.
I think she's an interesting character.
Well, I mean, and to this point, like at the end, they're like, oh, have you returned to being a sister of the light now? And she's like, no.
No.
I am Nikki.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, shake the
Oh,
shackles of all
Nikki.
the oppressors.
Yes. Love it. And she's so powerful. It's like, I'm curious what she's going to do with that.
Well, we have the Nikki Chronicles.
Yes. Which could be interesting.
For Kara and her arc. You mean her and Benjamin?
Oh, yeah.
That was the most, like...
I'm betting one of them is going to die soon.
That was the most, like, rom-com-y part of the book for me. And I was like, okay. She's got her boyfriend. Cool. Very cutesy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like that.
That was
honestly
cute.
Though, like, I prefer the little stuff, like her learning to make bread and her insisting on giving him bread to take, and like the way that she keeps trying to be like, well, I mean, like, it's like no big deal, and like it doesn't matter. Like, I would have, like, it was gonna rot anyway.
Yeah,
it's not even a thing.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know that I have, like,
just want to end this the way that the book ended. Lardo. I mean, apparently it's super great.
So we're told. Takes a year to properly make it.
Yeah, I mean, Kara has got a lot of plot armor at this point.
Yeah.
It's not the name of a person. I just want to be clear.
It's a food.
The real Starling. I mean, in fairness, it is the part of the book that after however many years, that's the part I remembered. So, arguably, yes. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure this is based on a real food that I'm familiar with that is not called lardo. But it's the same idea of, like, pickling fat. So, like, he did not invent this. But he did call it lardo. That's all Terry Goodkind. No one else did that. Good old lardo.
Yep.
All right. Well, Pillars of Creation next month.
Pillars of Creation. It'll be interesting. We'll be back on my channel for that.
I'm excited for that one. It's with the skipping thing, like, Pillars of Creation is still pretty good in my opinion. And it's Naked Empire that's we've broken the cycle a bit, in my opinion, or at least my memory of it. Maybe I'll read Pillars of Creation and be like, what was I thinking? That was awful.
We will find out.
We will indeed.
Yeah. Demon chicken.
What does Maya think of these books at this point? We've referenced a lot of things. You know who I also miss? Scratch. I miss Scratch.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's good to go in with lower expectations.
Yeah.
Always. Always, always. Expect the worst, hope for the best. That's what you should write on the statue. That's my life motto. It's your life. Expect the worst, hope for the best.
Oh, man.
Yeah. He's probably has little pups, and then they could be little baby gars that Richard can play with.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh.
A bit, yeah. I mean, you also have Anne and Verna.
Yeah.
Kara. Those aren't very crazy names. Why is his name Richard? I mean, in Dune, his name is Paul, and his mother's name is Jessica. You know.
It was the 90s.
But if they wrote it now, Richard would be spelled with a Y instead of an I. Because it's a fantasy name.
Right. That's how you show that it's fantasy.
It's weird, because, like, he's always, I've always known his name as Richard, even before I started reading the book, so it's never been weird to me. And, like, I don't know, when you say his full, Richard Cypher and Richard Rawl, like, sound like fantasy names when you say the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Better not be. I know there's no rules in this world other than the rules Terry Goodkind wants to make, so he better have spared the Gars.
Yes, indeed.
I'm pretty sure the Dune names are the way they are because of biblical reasons.
Maybe.
I'm like 99% sure that's why.
Yeah.
So Richard is just Richard. There's no biblical reason for name Richard. It's just Richard. Don't forget, Scarlet is a red dragon.
Indeed. In case you ever wondered. That
can be arranged. Oh yeah. Because when they have that conversation about how the chimes affected the magical living beasties.
Yeah.
It was sad. Alrighty then.
Okay.
That is that. Thanks everybody for joining us. I think it was a pretty good conversation.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see you
one.
this time next month for Pillars of Creation.
We will.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. All right.
Have enjoy your weekend, everybody, and we'll see you when we see you.
Bye.